He was one of the 4 writer-performers of the groundbreaking comedy revue Beyond the Fringe. His comedy partnership with Peter Cook, as the characters Pete and Dud, were comedy gold. He was a musician who had his own group, made several recordings, and composed soundtracks for movies. Later, he became a star in movies like 10, Arthur, and Unfaithfully Yours. Standing just 5 foot 2 inches, he projected a mammoth creative ability that has rarely been matched. Tonight, DinoStalgic Spotlight takes a look at comedy legend, Dudley Moore.
I don't drink because drinking affects your decision-making.
You may be right. I can't decide. It's just a little humour. Where's the rest of this moose?
Dudley Stewart John Moore was born April 19, 1935, at the original Charing Cross Hospital in central London. The son of Ada, a secretary, and John, a railway electrician, Dudley was brought up at the Beacon Tree Estate in Dagenham, Essex. At birth, Dudley was born with club feet, a condition where the foot is twisted inward and downward, Dudley's left foot being the more twisted of the two. This required extensive treatments during his childhood and made Dudley very self-conscious, as his condition was often the source of jokes for other children. As he grew into adolescence, he was also short, standing only 5 foot 2. This was but another obstacle to overcome for the young Dudley, but he found both solace and talent in music. Dudley became a chorister at the age of 6, and when he was 11, he earned a scholarship to the Guildhall School of Music, where he took up harpsichord, organ, and violin, and learned music theory and composition. It was obvious from the get-go that Dudley was a very talented musician, and was already playing organ at church weddings by the age of 14. Dudley attended Dagenham High School, where he received dedicated musical tuition from teacher Peter Cork toward his future Oxford Music Scholarship. Dudley remained friends with Court the rest of his life afterwards. In 1955, the 20-year-old Moore earned an organ scholarship to Magdalen College, Oxford, where he was tutored by a man named Bernard Rose. Dudley also performed with Alan Bennett in the Oxford Revue during his time there, and developed a love for jazz music. After leaving college, he joined John Dankworth's big band, playing piano, and would later form his own trio. In 1960, a man named Robert Ponsonby was putting together a comedy revue. He had been the director of the Edinburgh International Festival, which featured stage comedy revues from the Cambridge Footlights and the Oxford Revue. Moore was recommended to Ponsonby by John Bassett, along with Jonathan Miller. Moore then suggested adding Alan Bennett, and Bennett suggested adding Peter Cook. Thus, the 4 members of the new show, Beyond the Fringe, were formed. Beyond the Fringe became the forerunner of the boom of satirical shows in the UK during the 60s. Its initial run on stages in Edinburgh and its provinces were to a lukewarm reception. However, when the show transferred to the Fortune Theatre in London, it became a sensation. Moore provided the musical numbers for the show, most famously an arrangement of the Colonel Bogey March in the style of Beethoven, in which Dudley keeps going on because he can't figure out a way to end the arrangement. In 1962, the show came to America and performed at the John Golden Theatre in New York, even attracting the then-President John F. Kennedy to attend a performance. The show ran until 1964, when Dudley returned to the UK. Upon his return to England, Dudley was offered his own show on the BBC called Not Only But Also. Initially, it was conceived as a vehicle for Moore specifically, but Dudley invited his performance partner and friend from Beyond the Fringe, Peter Cook, to appear in the pilot episode. The dynamic between Moore and Cook was so perfect that Cook stayed on as a permanent fixture on the show. It was during the run of Not Only But Also that the famous characters of Pete and Dud were born. Pete was the serious wannabe intellectual, and Dud the buffoonish fool who was always trying to impress Pete with his faux knowledge. In the end, neither of them had any real sense, but the partnership and the back and forth between Cook and Moore was electric. Moore was also famous for purposely trying to make Cook laugh during live shows, much in the same way Tim Conway did to Harvey Korman during the Carol Burnett shows later. Unfortunately, much of the series was later wiped from existence by the BBC, but some soundtracks have survived on records. Moore and Cook then appeared in the 1966 film The Wrong Box, before co-writing and co-starring in Bedazzled. They then appeared in Monte Carlo or Bust and The Bed-Sitting Room, based on a Spike Milligan play. Dudley then did a couple solo movie appearances in 30 is a Dangerous Age, Cynthia, and an onstage performance in Woody Allen's Play It Again, Sam. All seemed to be going well for the comedy duo as the 60s came to a close, but as the 70s began, a progressively destructive habit would put a strain on the relationship that had brought the two performers so much success. In 1971, Cook and Moore took sketches from Not Only But Also and Goodbye Again, which had been a series of 4 one-hour programs that Cook and Moore had done for Associated Television in 1968. They paired these old sketches with new ones and created a stage revue called Behind the Fridge that toured Australia and New Zealand, and then eventually returned to London the next year. During the run of the show, however, Cook was visibly struggling with an addiction. Those who knew Peter Cook have said he always had been a drinker, but in 1971 the breakdown of his marriage and the constant pressure of touring and performing had gotten to Cook, and his drinking rapidly accelerated, to the point that he was often inebriated during stage shows. Now, while Moore himself had began drinking in the mid-60s and had his own demons with alcohol for a time, Dudley had a problem with his partner's lack of control and professionalism during this era, and it led to a lot of tension between the pair. The show Behind the Fridge did very well, and it won both a Tony and a Grammy Award. When the show ended, Moore decided to part ways with Cook and pursue his acting career, a decision undoubtedly influenced by Cook's drinking. And while the pair did reunite for an episode of Saturday Night Live in 1976, and did record a few albums as Derek and Clive, inspired by the humor of Pete and Dud, the two parted ways in 1978 after appearing in The Hound of the Baskervilles, a financial and critical flop for the two. Peter Cook would later die from a gastrointestinal hemorrhage due to his years of heavy drinking, and Moore took his death very hard. It's said that right after his death, Dudley would call Cook's home just to hear his voice on the answering machine. By 1977, Moore himself had stopped drinking and was ready to pursue his acting career. He moved to Hollywood, and his first role was the memorable part of Stanley Tibbets in one of my favorite underrated movies, Foul Play. The next year came his breakout role in Blake Edwards' movie 10 with Bo Derek, which was a big success. He followed this up with a not-so-big success in Holy Moses, but in 1981 came the movie that he would be most closely associated with and remembered for. Playing a drunk millionaire playboy opposite John Gielgud and Liza Minnelli, the movie Arthur became a huge hit critically and commercially. Dudley was nominated for Best Actor, and Gielgud won Best Supporting Actor. He lost the Oscar to Henry Fonda, but did win a Golden Globe for Best Actor in a Comedy. For the next few years, there were a string of movies that were moderate successes, like 6 Weeks, Lovesick, Romantic Comedy, and my favorite of that bunch, Unfaithfully Yours, a remake of the 1948 film of the same name. He went on to win a second Golden Globe for Best Actor in Mickey and Maude with Amy Irving. Then there were a string of not-so-critically acclaimed films, like Best Defense, Like Father, Like Son, Arthur 2 on the Rocks, and Crazy People. All throughout his film career, Moore was also still composing music and writing scores for many films, and released an album in 1991 called Songs Without Words. He followed this up with the album Live from an Aircraft Hangar the next year. Also in 1991, Moore co-created a television series called Orchestra, meant to introduce the public to symphony orchestra music. He followed this up by co-creating another show in 1993 called Concerto, to introduce the public to classical music. In 1993 and 94, Dudley appeared in two CBS TV series called Dudley and Daddy's Girls, but both were canceled relatively quickly in their respective runs. By the mid-90s, his film career had waned, partly due to his problems remembering lines and at times having trouble playing music, issues he had never had before. Speculation began to grow that Moore had begun drinking again, and he was fired from his role in the Barbra Streisand film The Mirror Has Two Faces. The truth was that Dudley was suffering from an onset of a crippling disease. In 1997, Moore found out during a stay at New York Hospital that he had calcium deposits in his basal ganglia, or frontal lobe of his brain. He underwent quadruple coronary artery bypass surgery and suffered 4 strokes. He was eventually diagnosed with progressive supranuclear palsy, a Parkinson's-like disease where some of its early symptoms mimic alcoholism-like behavior, which is why the rumors of his drinking had been so prevalent. His health quickly declined after this, and after a brief public appearance at a benefit concert with Julie Andrews in 1999, Moore became wheelchair-bound. Dudley Moore passed away on March 27, 2002 from pneumonia caused by his palsy. At the time of his death, his close and long-standing friend Rena Fruchter was there holding his hand, and she recalls that his final words to her were, "I can hear the music all around me."
Most of your life you've had to overcome severe problems. Now this. Are you bitter? Do you feel cheated?
I feel, no, I don't feel cheated. I feel as though it was good that I did my shows before this happened. And I got Arthur out and 10 out.
And people will always love you in those roles and
Yes.
remember you in those roles.
Yes. And so.
Dudley Moore was a monumental talent in the entertainment industry. He helped pioneer the British satirical craze of the 60s, helped create comedy icons in Pete and Dud, wrote music for albums, television, and films, and starred in hit movies, and won awards and accolades for those portrayals. He was an actor, a writer, a composer, a conductor, a comedian, a pioneer, and an icon. The man who only stood 5'2" towered above normal people and even his own contemporaries with his talent and accomplishments. He was a good-hearted friend to everyone who knew him, and people who did know him loved him, cherished him, and revered him. The orchestra of the world played a sad tune the day he died, but I'd like to think that the music he heard all around him at his death was the grandest of compositions, welcoming him into the heavens.